trying to keep up with everything going on, it can be a lot, right? So many headlines, so much noise. It's like, where do you even begin?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's kind of what we do here, you know?
Yeah.
We do the deep dive for you, so you don't have to.
We take these complex things, break them down.
Give you the good stuff, the need to know.
The nuggets, right?
Exactly.
Today's little adventure actually has a couple of stops, right? Two pretty different things, but both really kind of fascinating in their own way.
We're looking at some stuff from the Ring of Fire, that YouTube channel.
Right.
They had this video up. Gavin Newsom positions himself as top Democrat in DHS, is desperate to find leakers.
Kitschy title.
Oh, yeah? So first up, we're going to dive into what's going on with Gavin Newsom, the governor of California. You know, all the talk about him and the presidency.
Right, the future of the Democratic Party, all that.
And then we're going to switch gears completely. We're going to look at the Department of Homeland Security, DHS, and what they're doing, or at least what they're reported to be doing, to try and find people leaking information.
Which, yeah, it's a whole other can of worms, but we'll get to that. First, Newsom.
Newsom. Okay, so the whole thing with Newsom, right, is that everyone seems to think he wants to be president.
Right, like that's the big goal.
The next step, right.
Yeah.
But the thing is, they were talking about this CNN poll, and when they asked voters, you know, who best represents what the Democratic Party stands for.
Who embodies the ideals.
Exactly. Newsom, he didn't exactly light the world on fire.
Didn't get a huge percentage.
No. And even AOC, you know, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez,
right.
She had the highest, but it was still single digit.
Low single digits.
Low single digits.
Doesn't say much for the rest of them.
Doesn't. And the thing is, right, they contrast that with, like, what AOC and Bernie Sanders are doing. Like, they're out there drawing huge crowds, talking about the issues.
Grassroots stuff.
Yeah. But Newsom, he's doing things like, reportedly, sending out burner phones to CEOs all over California.
Wait, what? Yeah. Burner phones.
Like disposable phones.
Apparently, he sent out 100 of them.
100.
To CEOs. And they're programmed with his direct number.
Wow.
It's like, hey, anything you need, call me direct.
So what's the message there? I mean, what do you think the average voter is hearing when they hear that?
Right. That's the question.
And
the source, they were pretty critical. They were saying it makes him look like a corporate Democrat.
Out of touch with the base.
Yeah, totally. Like, he's more interested in these, you know, I think they call them silk stocking CEOs.
Right, the big players.
The big players in California. And they had this whole list of what was supposedly like their talking points during the recall thing they tried to do with Newsom.
Oh, right, the recall.
Yeah.
So what were they worried about?
Oh, it was a whole thing. Like the highest cost of living in the nation, which, I mean, come on. We all know that.
Right.
They were talking about crime rates going up since like 2022, saying it's bad for business.
The homelessness crisis, the fact that like 700,000 people have left California.
Exodus.
Yeah. And then the fires, right. The huge fire catastrophes.
All fires. Always a problem.
Always. And they were blaming the government for not doing enough. Then they started talking about all these businesses closing, like a record number.
Because of the minimum wage increases.
Yeah, they were saying it was because of minimum wage increases.
Right.
And they were complaining about water, like not getting enough water for farming and ranching.
Interesting.
And then, of course, the taxes, right?
Always got to talk about tax.
Corporate taxes going up.
Right.
And they're saying that's why businesses are leaving, going to places like Colorado and Arizona.
Lower taxes.
Yeah. And then there's the death tax, increased death tax in California. And then they even mention the wealth tax. But okay, here's the thing. They actually say that in the video that the wealth tax thing was actually from Florida, not California.
Oh, okay. So maybe not everything on that list was entirely accurate.
Right, exactly. But still, it gives you a sense of what they're worried about.
The big concerns, yeah.
And what's interesting to me is that this story, the whole burner phone thing,
yeah,
it was in Politico, but it didn't really go anywhere else. Like, not a lot of other media picked it up.
Interesting.
And they make this point in the video, like, what if a Republican had done this?
Send out burner phones?
Yeah, to CEOs. They're like, would the liberal media have been all over it?
Probably.
Probably. So it makes you wonder, right?
About bias, maybe?
Yeah, about bias in the media, for sure. And what's Newsom's game here?
What's the strategy?
Yeah. Is he trying to appeal to, like, a different kind of Democrat?
Not just the super progressive wing.
Exactly. And is that where the party's going?
That's a big question.
It is. It's like, how are voters going to see this? Are they going to see him as someone who's, you know, practical?
Working with businesses.
Yeah, working with businesses. Or are they going to see him as someone who's just like, too cozy with the corporate world?
Too close to the CEOs.
Yeah. And they mentioned this too in the video. They were like, Newsom, he's good looking. He's a good speaker.
He's got that going for him.
He does. But is that enough?
To overcome those concerns, maybe not.
Right. Like the cost of living, the homelessness, all that stuff.
Real issues.
Real issues. And then they even mentioned like a possible connection to Nancy Pelosi.
Oh, wow.
But they were like, they couldn't confirm it, you know?
Just something they heard.
Yeah.
But, I mean, even if every single point on that recall list wasn't completely accurate, you still have to look at those big issues, right?
I do.
I mean, are burner phones really the answer?
Right. Are those problems going to be solved by having a direct line to the governor?
I don't know.
I don't know either. And they made this point at the end, like, what we need is someone who's going to stand up to CEOs.
Not cater to them.
Not cater to them. Okay, so now let's talk about the DHS thing.
Total shift.
Total shift. So apparently the Department of Homeland Security has issued this warning
To their employees.
to their employees, and it's about leaking information.
Specifically about deportation.
About deportations, yeah. Like, if you leak information about deportations that are happening, you could lose your job.
Yeah.
And you could face criminal prosecution.
Wow.
Yeah. So they're serious. And the way they're trying to find these leakers,
How are they doing that?
polygraph tests,
Seriously?
Yeah.
Like lie detector.
lie detector tests, they're giving them to their employees.
Wow.
And they compared it to, like, what happens in banks, police departments, the FBI, even corporations.
When they're worried about honesty.
Exactly. Like,
Yeah.
making sure people are being truthful.
Right.
And the questions they're asking, they're all about, like, whether the employees have leaked info about ICE raids that are happening.
I see rays.
Yeah. And they said that apparently the DHS does use polygraphs for hiring,
Okay.
but using them to investigate leaks, that's not as common, at least not in the DHS.
Makes sense.
And here's the thing. Legally speaking, polygraph tests, they're not super reliable.
You hear that a lot.
Yeah, you do. Like in court, they're often not even allowed as evidence.
Unless both sides agree.
Unless both sides agree.
Right.
So it really makes you wonder, what is the DHS trying to do here? Is this a real investigation?
Or is it just to scare people?
Or are they just trying to scare people into not saying anything?
Yeah.
And they made this point too, like the results from a polygraph, that's probably not enough to fire someone.
Or prosecute them.
Or prosecute them, right?
They need more than that.
They need more. Paper trails, witnesses, something like that.
Right. More solid evidence.
Exactly. And then they brought up this whole thing about independent counsel.
Interesting.
Like in past administrations, there were independent counsels.
Okay.
And their job was to look into these kinds of things.
Internal investigations.
Yeah.
So what's the problem now?
Well, now there aren't any. And the point they were making is that those independent counsels, they were there for employees who felt like they were being treated unfairly.
Check on the system.
Yeah, like a check on the system.
Makes sense.
And now
All internal.
it's all internal. So, you know, if someone's being investigated, they might wonder, is this really fair?
Right. Are they just trying to protect the administration?
Exactly. Like, are they just trying to make sure everyone stays loyal to whatever the policies are?
Loyalty above all else.
Yeah.
Hmm.
But, you know, the people who leak information, they're obviously doing it because they think it's important.
Right. They're risking their jobs.
They're risking their jobs.
Maybe even jail time.
Maybe even jail time. They think it's that important.
Powerful stuff.
Yeah. So just to wrap things up for you, we've looked at two pretty different situations, right? We've got Gavin Newsom, maybe trying to be president, maybe getting a little too close to the corporate world. And then we've got the DHS cracking down on leaks, using polygraph tests. Two sides of the same coin, maybe.
Power control.
Power and control, exactly. And like we always say, we just try to give you the highlights.
The important stuff.
The stuff that matters. So you can, you know, understand what's going on without having to dig through all the noise yourself.
Save you some time.
Exactly. So here's a final thought for you to chew on. You've got this potential presidential candidate, Newsom, seemingly cozying up to big business. And then you've got the government, the DHS, trying to silence dissent within its own ranks. What does that tell you about, you know, the state of things?
Where we are right now.
Where we are right now. What are the responsibilities of the people in these systems, and how do they deal with, like, the court of public opinion?
How do they balance those things?
Yeah. It's a lot to think about. And we encourage you to keep digging, you know? Read more, learn more, and come to your own conclusions.
Stay informed.
Stay informed.
That's what it's all about.
That's what it's all about. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for listening.